So as you set out on your Betfair trading journey, you probably have all sorts of goals that you want to achieve and things that you would like to view as a success. But how do you get there? And what are the key things that you need to understand in order to set you off on the right path? Now, I've been trading for a very long period of time, and there are certain things that I would say to myself if I had to go back to where I started to give myself the best possible start. And if you want to find out what those are, then just watch the rest of this video. So 2 key fundamentals to start you off with. The first one is the big secret is that there is no big secret. If you are prepared to work hard, you approach it in the right manner, and you do roughly the right things, you're going to be just fine. And I'll come on to explain that in a second. The other thing as well is that you don't have to have any particular knowledge or qualifications to get to that first base and beyond. Because when I started doing this, I didn't have anything that would particularly suit me to this. Lots of people were very skeptical. Nobody really truly understood what I was trying to do. And, you know, everybody would give you a whole list of reasons as to why it wasn't possible or why you couldn't particularly do it. I've sort of got used to that throughout my life. Everybody's saying, that's not possible, you can't do that, that's impossible, this isn't the way, you need to get this to get there and stuff like that. And I'm afraid it was all just absolute rubbish. It was the worst advice that I've ever received. And you wouldn't underestimate, if you've got the energy, enthusiasm and passion to do something, that you could actually achieve it. You know, sure, it's not going to be easy and there is no particular shortcut. And this is why I said that, you know, the big secret is there is no big secret, because too many people are looking for shortcuts or some way to accelerate their progress. When you go to university, you try and train to get a particular skill so that you can get a particular job. But when people attempt to make money, such as trading or betting or any other way like that, they seem to try and do it the other way around. They just expect to make money immediately without putting the effort in. And unfortunately, you cannot do that. So yeah, my first advice to you is that particular starting point. I didn't have any particular reason why I should have succeeded, but I did. So never forget that when you're Betfair trading, all that you're trying to do is to get 2 bets matched. The way I often summarize this is when I first discovered Betfair trading, what I was trying to do is actually arb. So I was trying to lay a lower price that I could back out with a bookmaker. And then one morning I woke up, put both those bets on the exchange and they matched. And it was like, oh, wow, I've got like an unlimited, you know, market, a market worth tens of billions a year in which I can do this. But my core focus, you know, has always been on just getting those 2 bets matched. Now, when you look at football, tennis, horse racing, pre-off and in play, there are different ways of doing that. And the videos that I produce are giving you hints and tips as to where to look in the market in order to anticipate that one of the bets will get matched before the other, or how those bets get matched. If you focus on that, you'll be absolutely fine. And people sort of get distracted. They look at historical data, they look for some incredible system that will allow them to accurately predict that. But there are so many different ways of doing this. Some of them involve just putting 2 bets in the market and leaving it. You know, it gets no more complicated than that. So if you keep your focus on that goal and understand that that is your key fundamental goal, that's the most important thing that you can do. For want of a better word, the way that I suggest that you learn the best way of doing that is just to cock about a bit. I know that sounds a really weird thing to say, but that's how I learn. I would go into the market, I would say, well, what happens if I put 2 here? Or what happens if I open here and close here? What happens if I do this? What happens if I do that? And every single strategy that I've ever developed is based around that, what happens if I do that sort of moment. But yeah, you know, it's easy to get distracted and look at stuff that is irrelevant, such as if you look at historical data, that doesn't predict the future. It just tells you what happened in the past. Just focus on getting those 2 bets matched and you'll be able to make rapid progress. So one common mistake that I see people making when they're trying to learn to trade is they just try a whole mixture of different strategies. They sort of ask loads of questions about one particular strategy, and then next week they're asking loads of questions about another strategy. I'm thinking, hold on, you've just spent 1 week on that strategy. It's like, what? If you pick up a set of golf clubs, you can't go down the driving range for a little bit and then suddenly start playing in the PGA Tour. You know, some of these guys have spent years practicing their art. And when you're actively trading or trying to develop a strategy, giving it only a short amount of time is pointless. You won't achieve anything. You won't see anything. You won't learn anything. It's really important to understand that you've got to focus on one particular thing really feel like you've mastered that, or at least you understand it. Even if you're not particularly making money, at least you completely understand it, because that will give you the base on which to build to a higher level. If you keep skipping from one thing to another, you will learn absolutely nothing. So it's really important to sort of focus on one thing, sort of think, right, this is the sport that I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do within this sport. This is what I'm going to be looking for. These are the sort of strategies that I'm going to use. And then you relentlessly focus on that, because when you've mastered that, you can move on to other strategies. After many years in the market, I don't need to do that. I can turn up to market. I know roughly what that market is likely to do, and then I will fit a strategy into that market that I have traded hundreds of thousands of times. But that's just a skill that's been built on those foundations, just one step at a time. And that's why I suggest you focus on one thing and doing it particularly well. So if there's one thing I wish people had told me when I first started trading, even you go all the way back to trading on financials, was that trading is about taking risk, not avoiding it. Too many people make the mistake of being overprotective of their position or overprotective of their bank, and therefore they just focus on trying to minimize losses. But that's only one side of the equation. You need to be able to make the money in order to be able to soak up any losses that you make. At a core level, trading is a process of anticipation. You're looking at something that could happen. You're positioning yourself ahead of that in order to profit when it does happen. But you have to accept that sometimes that doesn't work out. And even if you get a really good setup, sometimes even that doesn't work out. But you're just trying to win slightly more than you lose. And you're doing that through a process of anticipation and a process of taking risk, not avoiding it. So another thing that I think is really important that I wish people would have told me is about psychology. Not just the psychology of trading, but the psychology of yourself, of the market, of the field of play when we're talking about sports. It's much more important than I could have ever possibly imagined. And I'd say that this was my breakthrough moment with trading. Is I'd had a purely stats-based approach to what I was doing up until I discovered in detail all of the psychology of trading. And that got me to a certain point. But in order to get to the much higher point that I got to, it was the psychology that taught me how to think and how to appraise what I was looking at within the market. Because when you're looking at a market, what you're trying to do is you're trying to think about what people are thinking about. It's a really important thing to do. And I have actually done a great video on this where I've discussed this with my daughter, and we've done a couple of little things. So yeah, watch that video if you want to get a true understanding of that. Once you begin to understand the psychology, not only of yourself, but of the market and the field of play, it really transforms the way that you think about what you're attempting to do. Because I could sit down with somebody, teach them exactly what they should be doing when they're actively trading, and they will not be able to do it. And that is because they're just in a different place. And I was in a different place all those years ago, and I had to unlearn all of my bad habits and get myself into the situation where I had loads of good habits and began to understand exactly what was going on, and internally, but also within the market. So yeah, never underestimate how psychology can play an influence in everything that you do. When you set a target when you're trading, don't set it over the short term, because that will influence how you approach achieving that particular target. So say you'd like to make £100,000 or something like that. What you don't do is reach for that target. You don't look at it and sort of think, what do I need to do? I need, 1,000 here, 5,000 there. What you should do is say, this is my target. I'm going to achieve it over 1,000 markets, 2,000 markets, whatever you want. And then you will actually end up with a much more achievable target. I have done some videos specifically on this, but my general sort of thrust here is that little and often soon adds up. So my objective isn't to be some incredible genius that just gets absolutely everything right or uses massive stakes or does anything wild like that. All that I'm trying to do at every single time is just sort of nudge myself ahead at a reasonable risk. And when you multiply that over thousands of markets, that soon adds up to a really big total. So that is the way that I measure myself. I don't look at what I'm trying to achieve on the next event or the next trade or on the next day. I take a much longer term perspective. And that means that those individual targets are much more easier to achieve, because any small amount multiplied by any big amount is going to be a big number. And as I've often said, little and often soon adds up. Whether you're betting or trading, one of the things to realize is that over the long term, the market tends to be fairly efficient. Now, that efficiency comes from, you get really good guesses and really bad guesses, and the two sort of net each other out. But the wonderful thing about the way that the market works is that even if you bring no skill to it, as long as your staking is correct and you've got control over your risk management, then you will be break even. Technically, you'll be break even minus a bit of commission. But all that your objective is to just nudge yourself slightly ahead of that. And I know that sort of sounds odd and unusual, but that could be through making slightly better decisions, whether it's the trading strategy you're deploying, the market you're deploying it in, or just actually doing it just a little bit better, being faster, more efficient, using better tools, all of those sort of things. Because if you participate in the market at random, you get random results, but those random results are actually break even minus a little bit of commission. So if you're looking to get profitable, that's the only barrier that you need to overcome. So what I tried to do with this video is not do any sort of preparation whatsoever. I just thought, what would I say to myself if I had to start all over again? What would be the key things that I felt were important that I've learned on my journey of the last 20, 25 years? And what I did was just did it off the cuff, basically. Thought, what are the most key and important things that I would say to somebody if they were sat opposite me? And each of these things I have actually covered in other videos, so you will often find them resonating through individual videos that I do. But these are the sort of things that I think would be most key and important to me if I was starting out now. Things, a base, a foundation to build upon, and a philosophy that I could sort of take forward in everything that I attempted to do. So anyhow, I hope that video has been useful for you.